Good morning and thank you for joining us. I'm Sharma Aiken. If we haven't met before, I'm the state foster care point of contact. We're going to begin this morning with an overview of the House Bill 312 requirements, but first I want to welcome Infinite Campus Data Collecting and Reporting Guru, Wendy Newton. She's the Office Data Manager with the Office of Continuous Improvement and Support. She is here live with us today, and in a few moments she'll talk about the student records transfer data and share resources with us. You're going to learn about how we are performing collectively across the state as she speaks about the record requesting data analysis for the 1920 school year and the current school year as well. We'll wrap things up with an overview of the student record transfer report, options, and details. Also here with us today from the Office of Continuous Improvement and Support is Marjorie Conley, and from the Office of Educational Technology, the wonderful Dee Dee Connor, Becky Jenkins, and they're here to they're happy to assist with any Infinite Campus related questions that you may have. Just a quick reminder, in efforts to streamline our communication and processes with district-level foster care points of contact, if you haven't already, please be sure to add your contact information into Person Role Manager, which is located on the KDE homepage under Open House. You'll want to work with your district's web apps administrative point of contact. This person has the ability to update personnel listed in foster care. This ensures that you receive important information regarding foster care. Also, this allows local child welfare agencies as a points of contact the convenience of using the KDE website for contacting districts. To make the webinar more interactive, we invite you to send us any questions you may have about the information in this presentation through the Go Soapbox platform. To submit a question, go to the web address shown on this slide and type in the access code KDEHB312. We'll try to answer any questions during the webinar, but for any that we don't get answered, we will follow up with the district's foster care point of contact. In addition to any questions you may have, we would like to know any suggestions or ideas you may have about the support or guidance KDE could provide districts in working with foster care. We will post this presentation slide after the webinar on the foster care webpage. I will also email a copy of the slides to the foster care points of contact, along with a link to a feedback survey, which I'll mention again a little later. Before we begin talking about House Bill 312, let's visit the Every Student Succeed Act, the bill reauthorizing and amending the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, which was signed into law December of 2015. And the foster care provisions took effect December 10th of 2016. The provisions are specific to students in foster care as it promotes greater stability with a strong emphasis on collaboration. The provisions are designed to support school districts in efforts to serve foster youth effectively. Most of the questions that I receive from districts involve school of origin, best interest determination, and immediate enrollment. For those of you that are new to the role of foster care point of contact, the best interest of the child considers many factors when determining the enrollment of a child, maintaining educational stability, appropriateness of the current educational setting, the child's attachment and relationships with staff and peers, and at the current educational setting. Influence of the school's climate of the child, safety of the child, and the proximity of the placement to the school of origin. Additional information on these topics shown on this slide can be accessed by downloading a copy of the non-regulatory guidance. This document contains valuable information such as roles and responsibilities for the state, local child welfare agencies, and local level points of contact. You'll also find frequently asked questions, definitions of the school of origin, as well as factors that should be considered in determining whether remaining in a child's school of origin is in his or her best interest. This is an invaluable resource. This resource, along with others, can be found by visiting the KDE webpage under foster care. House Bill 312 establishes requirements for the timely transfer of educational records of students in foster care. KDE has worked with Infinite Campus to develop a report that districts can run to monitor timelines of their records transfer and ensure compliance of the timelines defined in House Bill 312. Many of you all joining this webinar today may be the district level foster care point of contact who may not have been granted access to run reports in Infinite Campus. And this is a district level decision as to who can run ad hocs and generate reports for foster care data. Maybe it's your attendance clerk, enrollment, or school counselor at each school. However, whoever is designated must be in the know about foster students that are either enrolling into or leaving out of the district, which leads me to our next slide on House Bill 312, the legislative requirements regarding records transfer. This bill has a direct impact on local districts. The legislative requirement implements specific limits on turnaround times for local districts to request and transfer educational records of students in foster care. It is vital for district staff that send and receive records to be familiar with and remain in compliance with the time frames to request records transfer, as well as the time it takes to release records. This ensures that our most vulnerable students are enrolled in school and records are requested and released in a timely manner. We want to prevent a loss of records, a loss of credits. Districts need to ensure that the assigned person with access to Infinite Campus are transferring records in accordance with the bill. This has been a concern, especially for students in the alternative setting and for this population of students as well. The following slides will go over the key requirements related to records transfer. There are several other requirements in this bill related to foster care, which districts must comply with, so I encourage you to read the entire piece of legislation. Here's another requirement of House Bill 312 that relates to the enrollment of the student. It requires that a caseworker or manager either accompany the child and foster parent into the new school to enroll, and or they may contact the district by phone during the day that the child is being enrolled and provide information that the child is enrolling. The student must be immediately enrolled in the new school, even if they cannot produce records that are required for enrollment, including but not limited to academic records, medical records, and proof of residency. Immediate enrollment is a requirement in legislation as well as in the Every Student Succeeds Act, Section 1111G.
Sharma, your slide has not progressed.
Give me just a second, sorry. Okay, this is I'm sorry. This is what I was just talking about with the caseworkers, the case manager accompanying the child and the foster parent into the school, and that students should be immediately enrolled. Okay, so we should be all caught up now. When a foster youth changes school, the enrolling school must immediately submit a records request to the previous school to obtain academic and other records. House Bill 312 requires that the receiving school shall immediately request records from the student's previous school, and the previous school shall provide the new schools with all records in the student transfer information system by the end of the working day on the day that the request was received. If the record is incomplete, districts will have 3 days to send the complete record. And this is just a visual. Let me reiterate a few points that I've already made. The new school must immediately request foster students' records from the previous school. The previous school provides school with all educational related records in the information system regarding the child by the end of the working day of the day that the receipt was requested. The previous school, if the record provided to the new school is incomplete, the previous school shall provide the completed record within 3 days of the original request. Ensuring students are enrolled and records are requested and transferred in accordance with House Bill 312 helps students receive all appropriate services in their new school as quickly as possible. The new student record transfer report can help districts monitor the timelines of records transfer in their district. Wendy will now talk more about the report.
Good morning. As Sharma alluded to, the student records transfer is a very important task in assisting with the requirements of House Bill 312. The new school and the former school should reference the student records transfer data standard. That is a comprehensive standard that goes through the complete process of how to request records, release records, and import the records correctly. So I advise sharing that data standard along with the enrollment data standard with the appropriate staff in your district that is responsible for student records transfer, as well as the foster care liaisons, just to make sure they are familiar with the process as well. All data standards for Infinite Campus can be found on KDE's website by searching KSYS data standards. In addition to these data standards are all the data standards for data entry within the student information system, along with the process of the foster care records that are imported in to Infinite Campus from the Cabinet for Family and Children. Next slide, please. So the records transfer process is very important. It's very important for many reasons, just to make sure that all student records are up to date, even outside of the foster care student group. The records transfer process, which includes requesting records and releasing them, must be a priority for all districts. Failure to follow proper records transfer procedures can cause records to be lost, which means that the attendance of the student may not come through, behavior, enrollment history, grades, special education data, any of the student group data such as gifted and talented or homeless or foster care, important records such as immunizations and other health data. All of that data is required to be transferred from one school to the other when a student moves. And these are all required to comply with state and federal reporting requirements as well. There's always a state or federal report required for any data that is transferred with the student or is part of our data standards from KDE. So in compliance of House Bill 312, we worked with KDE programmers to create a new custom report. And most district staff are very familiar with the custom reports that KDE has created. The report that we created to satisfy House Bill 312 was the student records transfer report. And as Sharma stated, you will want to make sure that the appropriate district staff and appropriate school staff have been granted access to this specific report under Kentucky state reporting. We strongly suggest that district and school leadership use this report to monitor compliance and to inform processes, that the person within the schools and districts that are responsible for student records transfer, the process itself, have access to this report, as well as the foster care liaisons, as they can monitor that specific student group and the records transfer process timelines. So we created this report and we've done some analysis on the 2019-20 school year, and then of course up through October 29th of this school year. So in 2019-20, 26% of all schools requested records within 2 days of enrollment. There were over 35,000 requests statewide, and approximately 5,700 of those were for foster care students. Through October 29th, 2020, we have seen improvement. There have been 7,500 student records requests, and 62% have been requested within 1 day of enrollment. So we have definitely seen an improvement even in these times of COVID. Of the 1,000 student records requests for foster care students, 94% of schools requested records in 1 day. That's tremendously great. So we're happy with those improvements. We do know with the given circumstances, there's probably not as many transfers, but we do think that that data looks promising. Overall, 163 districts have reduced the amount of time between enrollment and initiating a request for records. Releasing records data analysis. So on releasing records by the former school, in 2019-20, 68% of all schools released records within 2 days of receiving the request. Of the total records released in 2021 through October 29th, 73% of schools released records in 1 day. Of the 1,000 records requested for foster care students, again, 94% of schools released in 1 day. So we really are doing a great job in this, and hopefully this report will help to improve that even more. Next slide, please. Okay, thank you, Sharma. So as I stated previously, the Student Records Transfer Report is a new report available in IC. It is suggested to assist district personnel in monitoring records transfer requests of students enrolling from or withdrawing to another Kentucky school district during the school year. So there's also a section in the report, and we'll go over it later, that indicates the foster care students to assist in tracking compliance of House Bill 312. As stated previously, the path in Infinite Campus to get to this report is under Kentucky State Reporting, KDE Reports, and the name of the report is Student Records Transfer. And as stated previously, access must be granted to the appropriate district and school staff by the district's IC administrator. You know, KDE can recommend, as I did just previously in the previous slide, that certain people in the district and schools have access to this report. Again, all access to anything in the student information system is a local district decision. So when you navigate an Infinite Campus to the report, there'll be 2 report options. One is a detail report, which is a student level report providing detailed information for students enrolling from another Kentucky school using the enrollment code of R21, or students withdrawing to another public school, which is using the withdrawal code of W22, or withdrawing under jurisdiction of the court, W12. So as you can see, these 3 entry and withdrawal codes are the criteria for inclusion into the Student Records Transfer Report. So that is the student level. That is called Detail Report in Infinite Campus, and it'll give you the student's race, ethnicity, gender, and SSID, etc. The aggregate report, which I think is very beneficial, indicates the total counts of all students transferring into the district with the average number of days to request records, and counts of students withdrawing from the district with the average number of days for releasing records. Those separate counts and averages are also displayed for foster care students. So I know that's a lot, so we're going to look into the report a little bit on the next few slides. So the aggregate report overview is going to have by school all students, transfer in count, transfer in average days to request, transfer out count, transfer out average days to request, and then it's going to have another set of data with the same columns for the foster student category. And we've got some screenshots on the next slide I think will help to understand it a little better. So within this data, you can see that the aggregate report screenshot will show you a list, give you a count by school of the number of students that transferred into your district. How many average days did it take for you to request the records from the previous district once the student transferred in? And then the same, it's going to give you the transfer out count of all students. How many students did transfer out of your district and went to another district? And once you receive the records request, how many days did it take to release the records? And as you can see, there's a category for all students, and then the same columns are available for foster care students. So these fields provide the count of all students and of all foster care students transferring into the district and the average days for the school to request records from the former district upon student enrollment in the school. Any school with an average greater than 1.0 in the transfer in average days to request foster students column should be flagged to monitor it for process timelines. The same for the transfer out. So those kids that have withdrew from your district and you have received a request for records, the fields are provided the count of all students and of foster care students withdrawing and the average days for the school to release the records once the records request has been received. Again, any school with an average greater than 1.0 in the transfer out average days to request foster students column should be flagged to monitor process timelines. So the detail report overview, this provides student level enrollment and withdrawal detail. For enrollment, it gives you the enrollment type, the start date and the status, the records transfer request date, the day count from enrollment to date of records request. So this just gives you counts. This is where your averages, the data from this report calculates the averages on the aggregate report. And for withdrawal, you get the enrollment end date and status, the records transfer request date, so the date that your district or your school received the records request, the date the records were released, and how many days it took between the request date to the date records were released. It's kind of hard to say. So within the transfer in detail, you can see that you're going to get student level data with the name, the transfer into school, so what school they came into, what the enrollment type was, if it was a primary enrollment, a secondary enrollment, or a special education enrollment, the enrollment start date, the enrollment start status, the records transfer request, so the date that you submitted the records request to the previous district, and then the count is going to give you the day that they enrolled minus the day that that records transfer request was submitted. So that's going to give you from the time they enrolled in your district, and then when did you request the records from the former district. That's going to give you the average there. For transfer out, these are the kids that have withdrew from your district and have went to another district. And so the students have walked into a new district, the new district has enrolled them, and they have sent a records request to your district for this student. How many days did it take once you received the records request to release the records? So that's what the transfer out detail is going to give you. So when I talked about a few minutes ago, higher than 1.0, we're going to talk about that in just a few minutes here. So in the detail report, highlighted fields in the day count columns indicate. So if it took you more than 1 day between student enrollment and records request initiated, it's going to highlight that field for you in yellow on the student. So it will tell you, okay, why, let's dive into this and see why did it take us so long to request the records for this student when they enrolled on, December the 12th, and we didn't request records until December the 15th. That would calculate based on calendar days. Records requested received for withdrawn students with no records request will be highlighted as well. So if you received a student or a student withdrew from your district but no records were ever released, that is going to show in your column as a 0. Records released more than 1 day after records request received will be highlighted. So as you can see, we've got a highlight of 1 here because it took longer than, took a day or longer to release the records after you receive the records request. So suggested uses of the report. Monitor timeliness of records transfer request and release to identify potential need for additional staff training or guidance. Utilize the data to inform improvements to the processes, and then monitor compliance with House Bill 312 requirements for enrolling, requesting, and releasing records for students in foster care. Those are the suggested uses of the report. You as a district or a school may run this report and find other valuable uses for the report. This is just KDE suggestions initially. So I know we went through that pretty quickly, and that records transfer part, you know, releasing records and requesting records and the timelines, there can be, once you get into that report, you're probably going to have questions. There may be questions on Go Soapbox now. I think once you get in there and start running that report and analyzing your data, it will be very valuable, but you may still have questions. So if you have any questions regarding the ESSA foster care requirements, Sharma Aiken can answer those questions. If you have questions regarding foster care data collection and reporting, you can send those to me, Wendy Newton. If you have questions regarding the Infinite Campus student records transfer process, then we advise emailing the KDE data request mailbox because the student records transfer itself process is kind of a all KDE initiative. There's not really one person at KDE that handles that functionality and process questions. But we would always be glad to assist and are available to answer any other questions. And at this time, I'll turn it back over to Sharma.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions from our Go Soapbox at this time?
Yes, you have a question that says, who at KDE is ensuring that the cabinet or contracted agency is following H-Bill 312?
I can answer that one. I am in close conversations with the cabinet. We've met to discuss this particular training that we were giving to the districts, and so everything should be in line. If you have any issues with the cabinet, you may contact myself. My point of contact at the Cabinet for Health and Family Services is Angela Winkfield. She does have an L in between her first name and last name, but you can contact me if there are any issues. If you need anything from the cabinet, contact me at the email address shown on the slide. Any other questions, Brenda?
We have an additional question. Hold on just a second. Let me get back. It says, our district uses OLR, so if a foster family does not complete that paperwork, do I just enroll using student locator due to timelines?
Yes, this is Wendy. Due to timelines, you would still search for the student using student locator and try your best to enroll the student as quickly as possible. Part of House Bill 312, which Sharma went over, was that the caseworker is supposed to contact the district either by phone or through that OLR process or whatever process that it means that they usually do. So hopefully with this House Bill 312, some of that lag time will be decreased as well. But we always suggest using the student locator to try to find students as you're enrolling them.
Okay, this is a scenario type question regarding 2 new foster children that would be enrolling January 4th. So when would that timeline start? Would it start now or would it start January 4th?
I'll take this one, Wendy. So hypothetically speaking, if you've already been contacted by the district, by the cabinet that you're going to have a child enrolling, you would want to start thinking about when's the last day of school. When is the school going to be out for Christmas break or winter break? Go ahead and request the records on that last day before they return back to school on January the 4th.
And additional questions come in. Who notifies the district or school of a foster care child? What methods of notification are acceptable?
Okay, as I mentioned in the slide earlier, you should be contacted by your social worker or child welfare agency, whoever works with that particular student in your area. They should be contacting you. However, you need to go ahead and establish protocols and processes with your caseworker, the local child welfare agency, on how you all will communicate. Like I mentioned earlier, it may be that they accompany the child into the school. They may send you an email. They may pick up the phone and give you a call, whatever method works for you all, but they should be contacting the school to let you all know that you will be receiving a foster student. And if you need information about who the ESSA point of contact is at the local child welfare agency in your particular region, in your particular district, please contact me and I can get you that information as well.
So we have another question. It says, to clarify, a foster care child must be enrolled at the time of notification if no immunization or medical records are available.
According to the law, that's under immediate enrollment. Students should be enrolled regardless if they're able to produce normal records that are normally required at the time of enrollment. That is correct.
And a follow-up question similar on those same lines. What if the previous school has no records to send? Sometimes that happens with foster students.
That's a huge issue. That's a very unfortunate, but at that time, you'll have to start doing some digging. You and the previous school district will, work and also work with the case record, the case manager at the local child welfare agency. They're going to have a form. It's a required form. I believe it's called an educational passport that they should have on that particular student for their caseload. They should have a history of the schools that the student enrolled. So you'll want to work closely with your caseworker to get that information. Any more questions?
So far, I think we have, we've asked the questions that have come in to Go Soapbox. So we seem to be caught up at the moment.
Okay. Well, if you all have any additional questions, please don't hesitate to contact me. I'm available email or phone. Always willing and able to help. Next slide is going to be about a webinar. See if I can get there. So I've created a very short webinar, which I will be sending out very soon to foster care points of contact. Please take the time to complete it. This will help improve our efforts of providing further technical assistance related guidance that meet your needs, as we want to ensure that collaborative efforts requirements are being met. I'd like to know what your greatest challenges are, and I'm looking forward to having great collaborative efforts with you all in your district.
Sharma, we have had another question come in. Does the educational passport still exist?
To my knowledge, it does. To my knowledge, it is a requirement under the Cabinet for Health and Family Services. If you have any issues, please contact the local child welfare agency about that passport. They should be able to produce that for you. Well, if we don't have any more questions, or if you all think of something at a later time, please contact me. I will be sending this information out to the district foster care points of contact very, very soon. Thank you for joining us, Wendy. Thank you, everyone who assisted with making this webinar happen. Thank you, districts, for joining us. And so we will, until next time, have a great afternoon and happy holidays.